Welcome back to another episode of Unleashed Alchemy. Thank you so much for being here. If you are new here, if you have been here, I appreciate your support. So in the comments, do me a favor, let me know how you are allowing your alchemy, your magic, your essence to be unleashed, to come forward in every day of your life. How are you allowing your magic to be expressed? Okay, let me know in the comments. I want to hear about you. Also, before we get in today's episode, I want to remind you about the course that I have about standing firm in your I am power while you are still interacting with people on this third dimensional plane. Okay, because after all, it's one thing to be spiritual, but then it's another thing to be able to connect with spirit, to be able to receive downloads and guides to function with a higher consciousness and integrate that into your everyday life, particularly when you are interacting with people, specifically the people in your life, the people that you know, love, and care about. All right, so the description for the course, the link for the course is going to be in the description of this video. All right, so check it out. So today's video, we're talking about detachment. And I want to talk about detachment because detachment is, I don't want to say an idea, but that's the word that's coming up. It is an idea and something that is necessary when you are going through spiritual awakening, transformation, which, by the way, is continual process. You don't just have just one transformation. You don't just have just one spiritual awakening moment. It is constant because there are levels to this, right? So what we learn during that transformation, what we learn during that spiritual elevation is we learn how to detach from outcomes. All right, and it's better that we do that voluntarily rather than challenges come up where we fall on our face or fall to our knees and just say, okay, I give up, I surrender. Okay, so we want to detach from outcomes voluntarily first, but sometimes that does not happen, and that's okay, because spirit, the universe, your elevated guides, your elevated angels are always there surrounding you, waiting for you to wave the white flag and just say, okay, here I am. All right, so let's talk about detachment. Well, what does detachment mean, or to detach? It means to unfasten. It means to separate. Okay, nothing mysterious about that definition, right? So why can it feel so difficult for us to do that? From my experience, there are three main reasons. However, underneath all of those three main reasons, there are countless reasons why. And again, from my experience, I have realized that for all of those reasons, one of them is going to fall up underneath one of those three categories. So the categories are time, okay, how we view time. The other one is, let me look at my notes here. The other one is being hyper-focused on what was and what is. And the third category is control. All right, so let's get into this. Now, when we talk about detachment, we're talking about being detached from how we think business should be. If we want a business, becoming detached to how we think it's supposed to unfold, or even it's how the business should look based on what we know, based on what we've seen. This could apply to any dream. It could apply to our relationships. Anything in life that you are thinking of right now, this applies. All right, so it can feel scary. Being detached can feel scary because it can come across as Well, if you're telling me I have to detach from what I desire, then that means that I'm sending off some message that I don't want what I desire. That is not the case. All right, so we're going to get into this. When I go over these 3 categories, you're going to understand why that is not the case. So let's talk about the first category, which is time. All right, being detached or detaching from outcomes can feel scary because of how we view time. The first question that would come up, that can come up, that has come up for me, perhaps for you as well, is how can I separate myself? How can I detach myself from something that I desire after I've put in all the time to create it or build it or perhaps improve it? So for example, I have had many iterations of an apparel business, okay? And before I realized what detachment really means, this time factor was like glaring in my eyes. Well, how can I detach from this when I put in all this time into this apparel business? How can I just leave it behind when I put in all this time, when I put in all this money, when I've done all this, when I've done all that? Well, when you are connecting to spirit, when you're rediscovering your connection to spirit, you realize and you remember that you never lose anything. All right, so when we talk about time, that is often associated with loss. Like I just mentioned, loss of time, loss of money. Oh, but I put all this work into it, loss of energy. So the time factor comes up because it's associated with loss. Again, we forget that we never lose anything. So here's a side note. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. When you realize that you never lose anything, then you also realize that your desire that you have, the vision that you have, wherever you're at right now, whatever you're doing right now, whatever circumstance that you think is surrounding you right now, you have everything you need internally for that desire to manifest in your life. Just think about that, okay? You may want to pause this video, rewind that part, and continue on. All right. Also, when we're talking about time, there's the idea of running out of time. But if I detach from this outcome, if I detach from what I want, then I'll be too old to have it. Okay. Again, when that idea comes up, once again, we're forgetting that we are expansive beings. Who we came here to be and what we came here to do, that is aligned with our soul, with how our soul wants to be expressed, that is aligned with that magic that I mentioned at the start of this video. That, all of that transcends time. Time is, so what? Time is not a factor. Who you came here to be, what you came here to do, it transcends time, period. All right? The next factor in why it can feel difficult or feel hard to detach is because we become hyper-focused on what was and what is. So I'm going to use an example of a business. All right, this is one of the first examples I'm going to use under this category. So I talked about, you heard me say earlier about my different iterations of my apparel business. Some design, because that is something I am a designer, okay? I love apparel. I love creating my own apparel. And I know that at some point that's going to emerge. However, I have detached from what was. And what was at the time appeared to be a failed apparel business. That's what was. What is that I don't have an apparel business. It looks as if I don't have an apparel business that is up and running. That's what is. So, you understand? So, I have to detach. My desire is still there, but I have detached from a so-called failed business. And what is that I don't have an operating apparel business. Okay? So, I wanted to bring that example to illustrate that. So let's get on it to this category. So, the first thing you have to understand is the importance of recognizing that you're more than this body. You are spirit first and always. All right? So, the ego attempts to muddy your intuition and your connection by your hypersensitivity to what you have seen and to what you think you know. So, going back to my example of my apparel business, well, what I've seen is not the profit that I wanted to make as an outcome from my apparel business. Okay? That's what I've seen, and that's what I think I know. Do you understand? So, the ego does not encourage us to venture into the unknown. All right? The ego strives to keep us safe. That is the ego's job. All right? So, when I say what we know, we become hyper focused on what we know. That doesn't just apply to our lives, but it applies to what we've seen in our families, our friends, our communities, what we see in society, also known as, those societal norms. Okay, what someone called normal. All right. So let me use another example. So let's say that your desire, you have this dream, and it's something. It is a dream. It's not just something that you just came up with. This is something that you imagine and you think about all the time, as being wealthy, having an income, consistent income of 7, 8 figures, 9 figures, 10 figures, however your imagination is going. And that feels expansive to you. And you want to experience the responsibility of having an income of 7 figures and onward. Well, what you have seen and what you know is that no one around you has experienced that. And then your ego becomes hyper-focused on that, rather than you allowing your connection with spirit to just be there and to guide you into that unknown territory. Because to your ego, to bring in 7, 8, 9, 10 figures and onward, that is unknown territory. That's a new responsibility that you have not experienced yet. But because that is aligned with your soul, because that is aligned with your soul's calling, the responsibility is already there. All right, so that's just one example. So I want to use another example. So let's say that you have this dream of being an author. You want to write fiction books, You want to be a storyteller, or you are a storyteller. You want to write mysteries. Now, perhaps in the past, you've written books. You've took the traditional route of submitting your book proposal to countless publishers, to literary agents, and you have received no, over and over and over again. More times than you want to count. Okay? That's what you know. That's what you've seen. That's what your ego knows. That's what your ego has seen. Right? Because that industry says if you want to be an author, then this is the route that you should be taking. This is the route that you need to take. You need an agent. You need to be signed by a publishing company. Even now we know, because of the online space, this is just a side note, we know that many successful, what we would call successful authors have not taken that route. They sell their books online, they self-publish. Even that can get familiar. Okay? So perhaps you tried that and you have not seen the outcome that you want to see. Well, let's explore this for a minute. And again, I'm using this example of someone being a writer and being an author, building wealth from being an author, because this is what you love. It's aligned with your soul. This can be applied to whatever dream. So instead of an author, replace that with whatever your vision is. Okay? So let's say the unknown is perhaps, instead of the publishing deal that you thought that would come into your life, instead of submitting all these proposals in the way that someone said you should do, instead of going into this online space of being a self-published author, of doing all these things, of building an email list, and taking the traditional route of stepping into the online space. Okay, we already know what that entails. Perhaps what you came here to do is create an entire museum of books, of your works, okay, of your stories. And in order for people to get access to your stories, there has to be an exchange, a money exchange. So you've got this book museum of your artistry, of your masterpieces that you've written, that you've taken the time to write. People pay an admission fee to spend a certain amount of time to read your books. And perhaps there's an admissions tier. There are admission tiers. So if someone wants to spend 3 hours, they have to pay for 3 hours, versus someone who wants to spend 5 hours at your museum reading your books. And perhaps in this museum, you've got membership options, yearly membership options for people to explore your works. Now this museum is not just a museum of your works, but now it's a personalized event space where you get to share your writing process with people, even for people who may not even want to be authors. Here's another side note. Even with all this AI that's happening, people still want personalized connection. They want art. They want real art that they can feel. People love art, so people will come to pay to hear you talk about your writing process. Now, in the meantime, you don't have a publisher. You don't have a publishing contract. You don't have a publishing deal. But in the meantime, you're still writing. You're still an author. And there's nothing about that example that I used that's traditional. Okay? So Again, using the example of an author. So when you hear detached from the outcome, it doesn't mean you quit writing. It doesn't mean you are not an author. All right? So that's just an example. Fill in the blank. Okay, perhaps some of you watching this now, you just got some ideas from that elaborate example. Okay? So, and also I want to add too, in the meantime that you've got this elaborate museum of your books, maybe you didn't take the traditional route of going on a book tour. All right? Maybe people flew in from all over the globe to come to your museum to hear you talk about your next book series. All right? So, very important to detach, because again, there's nothing traditional about that. You have to be willing to just let your mind, first of all, let your mind go, free yourself from the thinking of the how, and just be in your body and create. All right. So, third category is this: control. All right. Control. So, our need to control. We want to feel like we always know what we're doing. We want to feel like we think we have to know what's going to happen next. We want to know what we're doing. There's nothing wrong with that, because in that's a natural progression in our maturity into adulthood. All right? So, let's revisit the ego. That's where the ego comes in. Not only is it the ego's job to keep us safe, there's a control element in that. All right? But here's the deal. When you operate from your spirit, when you're operating from your soul, you are, let me get back to my notes here, you relinquish control. All right? Control has this element of hustle, grind, survive. When you're operating from your soul, when you're operating from your spirit, there's none of that. You're not operating from a place of hustle and grind. You're operating from a place of present fulfillment. What does that mean, present fulfillment? You're fulfilled right now. Not from a place of, I have to control, I have to do all these things, I have to follow a certain guideline, I have to follow a certain strategy to get this certain outcome. So then when I get this certain outcome, I can then be fulfilled, or I can then be successful. No, you operate, when you relinquish control, you start to operate from a place of present fulfillment. Going back to our author example, when that author relinquishes control of how their writing career should look like, they can then just write. The flow of the stories there's more of a flow of the stories. The writing becomes more easeful. And in the writing process, that's where the fulfillment is. Not in the outcome. Not even in completing the story, but just to allow the magic of the author inside to be expressed. Okay? So, I want to talk about, before we end, I didn't realize this video was going to be this long, but I want to say this. This is where, when we talk about detachment, this is where our spiritual connection is vital. Okay? The actions that you take are going to feel different. They're not going to be forced. I just talked about this with ease. There's no analyzing. You just know that this next inspired action that you're taking, before your ego can even start to fire at you all the reasons why you shouldn't take the action, or fire you at, with you, or toward you with all the reasons that the action does not make sense, you're already in motion. All right? There's a certain flow, okay, that you're going to feel. in your actions when you relinquish control. All right. So when you detach, again, I keep talking about flow and ease. It does bring ease because you're allowing yourself to be and create from confidence, not from survival. You're allowing yourself to imagine from confidence, not from survival. You're allowing yourself to imagine, okay? You're allowing yourself to be expressed, okay? Not from a place of survival, but from a place of confidence. Because you know who you are, you know that you're spirit first, you know that you're a cosmic being, okay? And what you desire, your ability to maintain and to be responsible for what you desire, you already have that right now, okay? So detach from the outcome, detach from the how, and just, not just, but allow yourself to be, okay? Allow yourself to get into your body, all right? Allow yourself to create from that space, all right? So that you can be fulfilled now, present fulfilled. All right, so thank you for watching this video. Don't forget about the course, How to Stand Firm in Your I Am Power in this 3D plane. All right, it is available now. The course link is in the description. And until next time, cheers.